Have you ever looked at an ancient cave painting and wondered, why? Not how they painted it, not when they painted it, but why? Why would someone living thousands of years ago, someone who spent every day fighting to survive, stop everything, walk deep into a dark cave, light a torch, and spend hours painting animals on a wall? At first, the answer seems obvious. Maybe they were just making art. But the deeper archaeologists looked, the stranger the mystery became. Because these weren't simple drawings made to pass the time. Some of them were hidden so deep inside caves that reaching them today still requires crawling through narrow passages, climbing over slippery rocks, and walking through complete darkness. There were no windows, no sunlight, no easy way out. So why would anyone willingly go there? Even after more than a century of research, no one knows the complete answer. And that's exactly what makes these paintings one of humanity's greatest mysteries. To understand why they exist, we first need to imagine the world the artists lived in. Close your eyes for a moment. You wake up more than 12,000 years ago. There is no alarm clock, no warm bed, no roof protecting you from the rain. The first thing you think about isn't work. It's survival. Is there enough food for today? Did predators come during the night? Will the weather change before sunset? Can your family survive another winter? Every decision matters. A wrong step while hunting could mean starvation. Drinking contaminated water could mean death. Even a small injury could become fatal. Life wasn't just difficult, it was unpredictable. Yet somehow, among all those daily struggles, humans found time to create. That alone is remarkable. Today, if someone paints a picture, we usually think of it as a hobby. Something relaxing, something enjoyable. Ancient humans didn't have that luxury. Everything they did cost energy. Every hour spent doing one task meant less time for another. If someone spent hours painting inside a cave, they must have believed it was important. Important enough to justify the risk. Important enough to return again and again. For thousands of years, nobody outside those communities even knew these paintings existed. Hidden beneath mountains and forests, they waited silently while civilizations rose and fell above them. Empires were built. Kingdoms disappeared. Languages were born. Religions spread across continents. And all the while, these paintings remained untouched in complete darkness. Then, in the 19th century, something extraordinary happened. People began discovering caves unlike anything they had ever seen. Behind narrow entrances and hidden chambers were walls covered with enormous paintings. Some showed powerful bison charging across the rock. Others showed wild horses, deer, mammoths, and mysterious symbols whose meanings have been lost to time. There were dots, lines, geometric patterns, handprints, animals painted with incredible attention to movement. Some even seemed to come alive when torchlight flickered across the uneven cave walls. For the people who first discovered them, it was almost unbelievable. How could humans living thousands of years ago create something so detailed? Without modern tools, without paintbrushes, without electricity, without even a written language. The more archaeologists studied these caves, the more surprising the discoveries became. The artists weren't randomly drawing whatever they saw. They carefully selected certain animals. Some creatures appeared again and again. Others were almost completely absent. The paintings also weren't placed randomly. Many occupied large, smooth sections of rock that naturally stood out inside the cave. Sometimes the shape of the cave wall itself became part of the artwork. A natural bulge in the stone could become the shoulder of a bison. A crack could become the outline of an animal's back. Instead of fighting against nature, the artists worked with it. That level of planning doesn't happen by accident. It suggests experience, skill, practice, and perhaps even tradition. But another discovery changed everything. Many of these caves showed almost no signs that people actually lived there. There were very few cooking fires, very little evidence of daily life. Instead, the paintings were often located in places people had to deliberately travel toward. Some passages were so tight that a person could barely squeeze through. Others required walking hundreds of meters underground before reaching the painted chambers. Imagine carrying nothing but a burning torch into that darkness. Every sound echoes. Every shadow moves. The air becomes colder. The outside world slowly disappears behind you. Finally, after what feels like forever, you reach a chamber. And there, illuminated by flickering firelight, gigantic painted animals suddenly appear on the walls around you. Even today, that experience is breathtaking. Thousands of years ago, it must have felt almost magical. Which raises an even bigger question. If these caves weren't homes, then what were they? And why did generation after generation keep returning to them? To answer that, archaeologists have spent decades studying every brushstroke, every handprint, every piece of charcoal, and every grain of pigment left behind. Over the years, several theories have emerged. Some are supported by strong evidence. Others remain educated guesses. None explain everything. But together, they begin to reveal something extraordinary about the minds of our ancestors. The first theory is also the oldest. Perhaps these paintings were never meant to be admired. Perhaps they were created for survival itself. The hunting theory might sound strange today. After all, how could painting an animal possibly help someone catch it? But to understand this idea, we have to stop thinking like modern people and start thinking like someone living 12,000 years ago. Back then, the world was full of uncertainty. A successful hunt could feed an entire group for days. A failed hunt could mean hunger. Several failed hunts in a row could become a matter of life and death. Imagine waking up before sunrise. The hunters quietly prepare their wooden spears. Some sharpen stone points while others wrap animal hide around the handles for a better grip. Nobody knows if they'll come back with food. Nobody knows if everyone will come back alive. Now imagine gathering inside a cave before leaving. Someone lights a torch. Another person begins drawing a huge bison on the wall. Not because they have spare time, not because they're bored, but because they genuinely believe this act matters. Some archaeologists think these paintings may have been part of a hunting ritual. By painting an animal before the hunt, people may have believed they could influence what happened in the real world. Today we call this sympathetic magic, the belief that an image can affect reality. To us, that might sound impossible. But for ancient humans, the line between nature, spirits, and everyday life may have been very different from ours. A painting wasn't just a picture. It could have been a prayer, a promise, or even a conversation with forces they believed controlled the world around them. There are reasons why researchers take this idea seriously. Many cave walls are filled with large animals that were incredibly important to prehistoric life. Bison, aurochs, horses, mammoths. These animals provided food, clothing, tools, and shelter. Without them, survival became much harder. If hunting determined whether your family lived or died, it's easy to imagine rituals becoming part of that process. Even today, athletes wear lucky socks. Students carry lucky pens into exams. Many people have small rituals before important moments in their lives. Those rituals don't guarantee success, but they give people confidence. Ancient hunting rituals may have served a similar purpose. They could have united the group, built confidence, reduced fear before facing dangerous animals. Whether they believed the paintings had supernatural power or simply strengthened their determination, the result may have been the same. But just when this theory seems convincing, it begins to fall apart. Because archaeologists notice something unexpected. Many caves contain animals that prehistoric people rarely hunted. Some paintings show powerful predators. Others include creatures that weren't a major food source at all. Even stranger, some animals that people hunted regularly appear only rarely in the artwork. If these paintings were simply about hunting success, why ignore some of the most important food animals? Why spend hours painting creatures that weren't central to daily survival? Those questions are difficult to answer, which is why many researchers believe hunting rituals explain only part of the story, not the entire mystery. Then another clue emerged. The location of the paintings themselves. Many weren't placed where everyone could easily see them. Instead, they were hidden deep inside caves that were difficult and sometimes dangerous to reach. Think about that. If your goal was to teach hunters, wouldn't you paint near the entrance, where everyone passed every day? Instead, many artists walked into complete darkness before creating their work. Some chambers are hundreds of meters from the cave entrance. Others require squeezing through openings barely wide enough for a person to fit. That doesn't seem practical. It seems intentional. And that observation gave birth to another fascinating theory. Maybe these caves weren't ordinary places. Maybe they were sacred. Imagine standing at the entrance of a cave at night. Outside, the wind moves through the trees. Inside, there's only darkness. A single torch pushes back the shadows just enough for you to take another step. As you move deeper underground, familiar sounds disappear. The air becomes cooler. The silence grows heavier. Eventually, you reach a hidden chamber. The walls around you suddenly burst into life. Massive painted animals surround the room. The flickering flame causes them to appear as if they're moving. A bison seems ready to charge. A horse appears to gallop across the rock. The uneven cave walls create natural shadows that make the paintings feel almost alive. Standing there, it's easy to understand why some archaeologists think these places were more than art galleries. They may have been places of ceremony, places where important events happened, places where people connected with something they believed was greater than themselves. Some researchers believe only certain members of the community entered these deepest chambers. Perhaps experienced hunters, perhaps respected elders, perhaps spiritual leaders. We can't know for certain, but the caves themselves feel different from ordinary living spaces. They're quiet, hidden, separated from everyday life. Almost every culture throughout history has created special places for important ceremonies. Temples, shrines, sacred mountains. Ancient humans may have viewed these caves in a similar way, not as homes, but as places where the physical world met the spiritual one. And if that's true, then every painting may have carried a meaning far deeper than we can understand today. Yet even this theory has its own problems. Not every cave fits the pattern. Not every painting is hidden deep underground. Some caves show evidence of repeated everyday activity alongside the artwork. Others don't. Once again, no single explanation solves every mystery. But with every theory, we learn a little more about the people who created these remarkable images. The deeper archaeologists looked, the more they realized something important. Perhaps they had been asking the wrong question. Maybe the goal wasn't to discover one reason ancient humans painted caves. Maybe there were many. What if these paintings weren't created for hunting? What if they weren't only used in sacred ceremonies? What if they were something much simpler? And, in a way, something much more familiar? Stories. Think about how we share experiences today. We write books. We make movies. We record videos. We take photographs. But 12,000 years ago, none of those existed. There was no alphabet, no paper, no way to write down an important event. Yet people still needed to share knowledge. Imagine a group of children sitting around a fire at the end of a long day. An older hunter begins telling the story of a dangerous animal he once faced. Instead of only using words, he walks over to the cave wall. He points to a painted bison. He traces the outline of its horns with his finger. He shows where the hunters stood, where the animal charged, where the attack almost failed. Suddenly, the story becomes much easier to understand. The painting isn't just art anymore. It's a lesson. Some archaeologists believe cave paintings may have helped pass knowledge from one generation to the next. A single image could teach young hunters how animals moved, how large they were, how dangerous they could become, which parts of the body were most vulnerable. Knowledge like that could make the difference between life and death. In that sense, these caves may have become the world's first classrooms, not built from stone blocks, but from the stone that already existed. Each painting became another lesson. Each generation added its own experiences. Each visit preserved knowledge that might otherwise have been forgotten. Of course, that's only one possibility, because one discovery continues to puzzle researchers more than almost anything else. The handprints. If you've ever seen photographs of prehistoric caves, you've probably noticed them. Hands everywhere. Large hands, small hands, adult hands, children's hands. Some are painted directly onto the wall. Others were created by placing a hand against the rock and blowing pigment around it, leaving behind a perfect outline. The process itself was surprisingly simple. Pigment made from materials like charcoal or red ochre was mixed with water or animal fat. Then it was blown through a hollow bone or directly from the mouth onto the wall. When the hand was removed, a perfect silhouette remained. Thousands of years later, it's still there. Think about that for a moment. Place your own hand against a wall. Now imagine someone doing exactly the same thing. Not yesterday, not last year, but thousands of years ago. Your hands would almost overlap. The distance in time feels impossible, yet the connection feels immediate. Those weren't mythical people. They weren't another species living on a different planet. They were human. They loved. They feared. They laughed. They protected their children. They worried about tomorrow, just like we do. Sometimes we imagine ancient humans as primitive because they didn't have modern technology. But intelligence isn't measured by smartphones or skyscrapers. Creating these paintings required planning, patience, observation, skill. Artists understood the shape of animals. They knew how muscles moved. They used the natural curves of cave walls to create depth and motion. Some paintings even appear animated when viewed by the light of a moving torch. As the flames flicker, the shadows shift. A horse seems to run. A bison appears to breathe. Whether that effect was intentional or not, it must have been astonishing to witness. Modern scientists continue to study these caves using technologies the artists could never have imagined. Radiocarbon dating helps estimate the age of charcoal. Microscopes reveal tiny particles of pigment. Three-dimensional scans preserve every crack and every brushstroke without damaging the original artwork. These discoveries have revealed something surprising. Many caves weren't painted all at once. People returned again and again, sometimes over hundreds of years, sometimes over thousands. One generation painted beside another. Children may have grown into adults and later brought their own children back to the very same cave. That tells us these places remained important for an incredibly long time. Traditions survived. Stories survived. The caves themselves became part of a shared memory. Even today, archaeologists continue discovering new cave art around the world. Every discovery answers one question and creates several more. Were these paintings hunting rituals? Sacred ceremonies? Ancient lessons? Stories? Territory markers? Expressions of creativity? The honest answer is, we don't know, and perhaps we never will. Different groups living in different places almost certainly had different beliefs. A cave in one region may have served a completely different purpose than a cave somewhere else. Looking for one universal answer may be impossible, but maybe we're asking the wrong question. Instead of asking, why did ancient humans paint caves? Perhaps we should ask, what does the fact that they painted tell us about them? It tells us they observed the world carefully. It tells us they remembered. They imagined. They planned. They taught. They expressed ideas that mattered to them. And most importantly, they wanted something to outlast their own lives. Long before the first kingdoms, long before pyramids, long before roads, writing, or cities, people were already leaving messages behind, not with words, but with images. Every handprint says, I was here. Every painted animal says, this mattered. Every symbol reminds us that human curiosity didn't begin with civilization. It began long before history was ever written down. That's why these paintings continue to fascinate us. They aren't just ancient art. They're windows into the human mind, into hopes we can no longer fully understand, into beliefs we'll probably never completely uncover. Yet somehow, even after thousands of years, they still succeed in doing exactly what their creators may have hoped. They make us stop. They make us wonder. And they make us ask questions. Maybe that's the real reason they survived. Not because they gave us all the answers, but because they never stopped asking us one simple question. Why?